want you to know there are only 354 days till Christmas. Christmas is coming again. And I know it's never too early to be in the planning for Christmas, right? I mean, if you're in my life, it's never too early. Never too early to be playing Christmas music either. I arrived here in August of 2009, and when I first went into our senior minister's office, he was playing Christmas music. And he said, never too early. No time ever is too early for Christmas music. And certainly, it's never too early or too late to be readying for Christmas by practicing being the Christ. In Unity, we understand that our master teacher, Jesus, whom we celebrate, especially in the month of December, the whole month long, from Thanksgiving, the last Sunday of December, through to last weekend, we celebrate this individual for the lessons he brought us. And last week, my message was practical Christmasing, how to take that spirit into the rest of the year. And this is like part 2. But I like a catchy title, so Christmas is coming to keep you awake, if you'd been able to see it on the slide overhead. Those of you at home were in on the secret to begin with. But what happens is often, I know I experienced this, not so much in church anymore, but it used to be you pack up the Christmas ornaments and put them away, and maybe you put away the Christmas spirit, the Christ spirit as well. Well, I'm just here to remind you today that only 354 days, and let's keep practicing all year long, because we understand Jesus was in the Bible. It's more than a historical record of this extraordinary life that he lived, that he was the person that most lived the God intention for humankind. There have been many masters who have shown us this example, both ancient and contemporary. But here in Unity, we particularly identify with the Bible as a primer for our spiritual life. We recognize that in the allegory and the metaphor and the stories and the lore and the artful poetic language, the very lyrical language that exists throughout the Bible, it's the record of our individual, personal journey to being in relationship with God, to knowing and taking on this pattern that was Jesus, this template of what fulfilled and abundant and serving life can look like. He was certainly the master, but that pattern exists for all of us and our own human experience when we realize that this human journey is also a spiritual experience where we are trying to uplift and uplevel and expand the human expression of this now life, of this now moment, to recognize, to truly take hold of this idea that just as Jesus demonstrated and taught, we too hold this divine essence of God within us. Not only our only human beingness, but our holy and true Godness as well. For some of us, coming into Unity, this idea that we too are divine, that we hold this essence of God within us as a pattern to be expanded and expressed, that we have this divine nature right alongside our human nature. Some days that's only to human nature. It's an epiphany of major proportion to take on this idea of our divinity as well. That Jesus wasn't somebody to be placed on a pedestal, but he was an example to observe and study that life and take on those lessons, those examples for our own self, so that we may live more fully. So if this idea that you are the Christ is not how you know yourself in this moment, or you're still expanding on that, if that's unfamiliar to you, well, this is the 9th day of the 12 days of Christmas. And we are in the midst of that period of time that we recognize that the wise ones made their journey to recognize the birth in the babe Jesus of this Christ idea that was coming into the world to create extraordinary change. So this is the perfect day here in the midst of the 12 days of Christmas, on the way to January 6th, which we recognize as the Epiphany, the unveiling, the revealing of this great truth in our planet, that we could step into that idea ourselves. Whether it's a wholly new idea and you have got a hold of it today, hallelujah, or this is the day when you say, I am not letting it go because I have 354 days before Christmas comes again, or you are breathing into that truth so deeply that it is the anchor for your life, that I don't want to say you, although that's accurate and true, but let's make it personal. I am the expression of the Christ. Speak that with me if you choose. I am the expression of the Christ. Right here, right now. Let this be your aha moment, your personal epiphany of coming into a greater awareness of that. That might, as my granddaughter says, blow your little kitten mind with its magnificence and its unlimited expression. Right here, this experience I'm having in this life, in this body, I too have the same pattern and abilities within me that Jesus held in his life on this earth and shone as a lamp for us in our path. So these 12 days from Christmas to January 6th, it commemorates the travelers who followed a star, who listened to their inner guidance, the legend tells us, to marvel at the birth of a babe who was foretold to be a pivotal influence coming into the world. And despite song and lore and stories that have long been told, the Bible does not actually record whether these visitors indeed happen to be old and wise. That's up for a possible debate. It does not tell us literally how many there were. Scholars suggest it might be 3, but it may have been as many as 20. Do you know it doesn't actually say they were men? Perhaps they didn't ask directions, and that might be an indication. I'm just saying in my personal experience. All we know is that Magi came, traveled, and made the journey, and they came with 3 gifts. This dearth of facts has not prevented us culturally to defining them as kings, to celebrating them in songs, and to naming them quite extraordinarily as Melchior, Caspar, and Balthazar. It does say they came from the east, but you've got to have an orientation point to know where that is. We know in the story the orientation point was Bethlehem. More importantly, it was the star. And metaphysically, that star for us is this inner guiding wisdom that we all hold and all possess and hope we pay attention to when it shows itself to us as that star shone so briefly in the sky. They came to observe, to confirm, to reveal, to celebrate, and unveil. This is Epiphany, this important event that was taking place. But they came on faith. Doubt they had a roadmap, guided by some star that was a prophecy, which we understand to be that inner guiding force, the God positioning system, perhaps, because no phone, no GPS. But they made that journey on faith. They had read this prophecy or received this prophecy, and they believed it to be so. They decided this warranted the effort to travel however far, how many of them, whoever they may have been called, and whatever gifts they may have brought. They were called to come and reach to this child and see this experience in its occurrence, and then give witness to it to the world, give witness to the arrival of a new era for humankind, one that was to be marked by love, the infinite presence and power of the universe. Our journey, spiritual, human, often doesn't come with a roadmap. Every parent I know pretty much has wished aloud that they had an owner's manual for the baby that arrived in their life. But when we travel to recognize this presence of divine energy within our own being, to expand it, to fully express that divinity, to live in the deep connection with all that God is, all that we are imbued with, not a God outside of us, but this energy of God that supports us, is within us, fuels our passion, our creativity, our expression as individuals, unique, and yet part of one, part of a whole. Whew. In unity, we have a system that is like a roadmap, a spiritual toolkit for our awakening, our adventure in expressing more fully the truth of our being. It's a means to become this Christ template as we live our human lives, express our divinity as we stand and live in our humanity. Charles and Myrtle Fillmore were the co-founders of our unity movement, and Charles had a definite intellectual bent. Now, he had an epiphany about his wife Myrtle, who had taken an idea on in faith that she could be physically whole, could be restored when she had a disease that was not readily curable in the late 1800s. She sat with this idea that I am a child of God and I do not inherit sickness. And Charles just sort of, stepped back with his intellectual mind, as some of us do, raised my hand to that, and watched while over 2 years, Myrtle became whole, released all illness, became vital and vibrant again in her mid-40s. And Charles said, might be something going on here. And he began to, in meditation, discern how this had come to be, what had taken place. If this was something worth knowing about, Charles felt you just went right to headquarters, meaning God. And he sat in meditation and spent effort and time in making a connection with this deep inner presence that Myrtle was demonstrating. And in that process, over time, in meditation, he discerned what we now call the 12 powers of spiritual facility, our 12 spiritual gifts. He identified these as qualities that existed in this perfect template of Jesus the Christ, not always perhaps the human, but the one who was so connected with God that he did not doubt his ability to heal, to manifest, to transform lives, to encourage them to be in that transformative power, to teach people that it wasn't his work, but it was the Father through any one of us who can bring about miracles, seeming miracles in our lives. And Charles associated a system where we've got a roadmap to follow through the year of 12 qualities of the Christ energy. And we do observe them every month here in this church. And in your bulletin, you'll see that faith is highlighted today. It describes it briefly, gives you an affirmation, relates to the disciple, as Reverend Johanna mentioned, perfect that the year starts with faith and the disciple Peter. Just a side note, 3 of the Gospels give him credit as the first disciple to follow Jesus. Matthew's not quite as clear. Matthew might give credit to number 1 to somebody else. So you decide. Choose where you will place your focus in your journey this year as we make this 354 days left till Christmas expression of who we are expand more fully. That we get to be in this energy of reaching our consciousness into the energy of God, up to the level of the Christ pattern, the Christ nature itself. 12 capacities that you can epiphanize. That's a quarter word, isn't it? Just made it up. Epiphanize your adventure this year for how to live an abundant, fulfilled, and contributing life in the world. That it comes to you easily and effortlessly, and you have more than all of the good of life to share. That you listen to the passions of your heart and you contribute in ways that touch the lives in your family, the lives in your community, literally creating ripples that change the world through your rising consciousness through this journey. And across this year, beginning with January and the power of faith, we will also explore the power of love, strength, wisdom, power itself, spiritual power, mastery, imagination, understanding, will, order, zeal, release, and life. Each one of those was demonstrated in the lives of the particular disciples that Mr. Fillmore discerned to connect those particular powers with, to give us a conscious tracking method. You know, when I'm trying to learn something, if I can repeat it back, I know I am getting a hold of it. I've learned more by teaching than I ever learned by being a student. Because if I can verbalize it for someone else, I know I have possession of that information. And so in the midst of this journey to January 6th, the official day of Epiphany, when the wise ones arrived, how many of them there were, to recognize the birth of Jesus, what a good day. What an excellent day for your own aha moment about the truth of who you are, about where you are in your life and where you choose to go, and particularly about what is yours to do for the good of humankind. To see this great truth for your own self, that you are a manifestation of God itself. And one way you can come into recognition of that is to focus your journey in these 12 powers, one a month, gaining facility, expanding your helpful expression of these qualities in your own life and in the world. To live from this perhaps new idea, or perhaps greater awareness, I too am the energy of God. I am the Christ in expression. You get to choose to claim your own epiphany today and every day, but there are only 354 left. And faith is the power we recognize in January. Somebody along the way subscribed a system of colors, so you will see often many of us on the platform decked out in that color or wearing a lei or something that signifies that color. It's royal blue for the month of January. Peter is the disciple we connect with faith when Jesus talked about building the church on the rock of Peter. It was not seeing the evidence of the possible coming into being, but knowing the possible could be called into being by our understanding, our awareness. So just as the wise ones acted from faith to follow the star, which is really the inner calling, divine guidance, intuition, we also are called to find our harmony with God and to live in faith, not by evidence. Not because we are given a series of outward signs, but because we are called to listen to the inner guidance available to us through this presence of God alive in us. We practice listening daily to the inner presence of truth and understanding, so the light we follow is clear. The star that guides us is bright and vivid. We nurture that activity within us, that clarity always present, and yet it might only be one step at a time. That is where faith comes into being. You have a star you're following, you have a goal, you have an intention, but you don't know what the 50-step plan is or the 5-year program is. You just know this is the calling of your heart, and you know it with depth and with clarity. Then what moves us forward is this capacity of faith, our ability to make that possibility real in our lives. This is a faculty we already have. It's not that we have to go finding it, it's we just have to open to its fullest expression. We live by faith consciously or unconsciously. When things get challenging and cause us distress, we may wonder where our faith went. But faith is innate. It can't go anywhere. We can kind of pull some inner plug and disconnect from it because we have that free choice. But it exists within us all the time. Sky St. John used to like to say, we have all the faith we're ever going to have. It's how do we use it? Where do we place it? So just a moment, for this moment, think about how many things you perceive as real that cannot be seen. When was the last time you stepped out of the door of your home? Oh, wait, let me check and see if gravity is engaged today. Am I going to be safe walking to my car? No, I certainly didn't. I count on it being there. I know the sun is shining in today's sky, even today's sky. Beyond those clouds, the light is always present. I knew that when I opened my eyes, even though I got up and it was still very dark today. I know it's on the other side of that liquid and fluffy white stuff that seems to be present. There is the light gleaming and bright. My dad, the engineer, was fond of saying, oh, we know how to harness electricity. We don't understand it all that well. Well, I understand enough not to put something metal into the outlet that isn't intended to go into the outlet, because I trust that it's going to be there. Now, I agreed, we're having a little bit of challenge around the electrical stuff in the church today, but that'll get repaired because electricity is flowing just like the energy of God. We know who we can count on in our life, our family, our friends, in our community, a counselor, a trusted friend. When the chips are down in our life, we know who we can go to, and we know we'll get the support we need to help us find our path back to clear thinking. All of these are small acts of faith. And I believe there's no degree to faith. It is, or I have disconnected from it. It's present, or I have spiritual amnesia where my faith is concerned. A Course in Miracles teaches that there is no degree in miracles. It doesn't take any more energy, no more prayer, and certainly no more behaving correctly to create a miracle that we would call small versus parting a sea, moving a mountain. The mountains in our lives are as big as the ones recorded in the Bible. There is no degree to miracles. There is only knowing what you are capable of and not quite having a grasp of the truth of your being, that you too are the Christ and can do all things through God who empowers you, who lifts you up, who moves you in grace in every moment. So there's no degree to the laws of the universe. We have access to them just as Jesus did, as every master that's ever been recorded. Oh, we just need to allow, to open to that reality so that we can have the experience of faith moving mountains in our lives. When we can realize this truth, then we place our faith in those things that support the abundant life, that support a fulfilled life, that support our being in service to one another and to the world, living out of this knowing the truth of who we are. I claim this is a fundamental truth in my life, that the universe conspires for my good. And if you're not sure about it, know that I believe it for each one of you as well. There is nothing going on but God, but good in my life and in our world at the spiritual consciousness level. And that's where the power is. The power is not in my human thinking. I like to tell God how it should be, and I stub my toe on that a lot. When we connect at a higher consciousness, a different frequency with this idea of being the Christ, and take that on, then our lives unfold with a different sort of grace and ease. Now, I'm not here to tell you that the spiritual journey is then devoid of difficulties. Oh no, life will hand us whatever it does hand us. The power of faith and the power of our Christ nature is about illuminating the path of our life, whether there are obstacles or not. Unwanted experiences may come to us, but that light within that is the Christ is still available to shine brightly. And that's the expression of faith. Knowing that that light exists beyond the clouds, beyond the difficulties, beyond whatever unwanted experience you may be having. To face the death of a beloved husband and stand in the truth that this too somehow is a spiritual, deeply spiritual experience. Took me a few months to kind of get my equilibrium in that truth. But even in the midst of the worst days, I said, I am being carried through this journey by the light of God. Whatever it is, your employment contract ends and you have no idea what the next step is. But still in your brain, when you're being released, that part of you that knows this presence of God so fully says, wow, if this is taking place, I wonder what good is happening next. And you go to Australia for 3 months and work with Unity people there for a passionate, expressive period of time, calling that energy forth in all of you who are working together. So I often haven't a clue about what the next step is when something shows up in my life, but I know it will be God-directed. I know it will ultimately be good, and I just wait for the end of the story to see what the good is that will come. 18 months ago, we all gathered in the office, the staff, half a dozen of us or so, wearing our masks, having a conversation. Reverend Denise Schelling saying, I don't know anything about leading a church through a global pandemic, but God does. And we will move through this experience together in that energy, in that power and presence of love, when we stay focused in that. Whenever we are lost in the frustration of, I don't know what to do, stand in your faith, your knowing that possibilities can be made real through you, not waiting for somebody else, but waiting to hear the call of your heart for what that next step is. Knowing that the universe, God, conspires for your good, and claim that all is well, and all is well indeed. Faith is the simple act of deciding what rock on which you will build your life, your church. What foundation will you establish in your consciousness? This perhaps is why we observe faith in the month of January, to prepare ourselves for these coming 354 days of moving into the greater expression of the Christ energy, to know that we live in a universe that's a friendly place, and to know that we choose and create that with the power of our thought. Where thought goes, energy flows. So we are empowered to make the choice of what our life looks like. That's part of the seeming magic of the message of the Christ, that we bring all of this power into our own lives to create it as we choose, to surmount the problems that show up, to walk through the difficulties with light on our path, no matter what. We get to choose whether or not we are in a loving environment, knowing that God is around us all the time. Today, we're going to step into an act of faith, and you hopefully received an envelope when you arrived, and a little form that says, Dear God, a pencil inside. Today's meditation is about this act of faith, claiming that star to guide you these 354 days to the next marker of observation of epiphany, the transformation that's taking place in you. So our meditation today will be centering in this great truth, in the power and presence of faith, while we choose what we wish to have, to be, and to do this year. And in the meditation time, in the quiet, you will write down what God sends into your heart, into your mind, into your understanding today. And if you choose to seal it in the envelope today, it can go in the God box at the close of service. Let whatever arise in you represent the calling of your heart, that you may be reminded of it when we mail this letter back to you next year. If you're at home, you will find an online form to submit your letter to God, and we'll put it in the envelope and address it to you. We want you to claim the truth of your highest being. That may be a stretch for us, it should be. To rely on God means we are stretching into this allowing, this surrender, this giving space for God to work in, as, and through us. So we will watch where our thoughts go so that we can connect as the energy flows. I'll invite you to take a breath with me and come into this space as we hear the gong. Breathe into this space. Know that that breath is the movement of life itself, of God energy through you. And as you release a final big breath, and just let your breathing find an easy pattern, call to the God of your being. Imagine you are sitting down with the infinite presence that guides and directs our lives. And that your question today is, what is my star to follow? What is the leading of my heart calling me through this journey that begins with faith and leads me to the deeper expression of my own Christ nature? You will find the thoughts come to you from a deep place within your center. And as you are ready, take that pencil and simply write what calls from your heart for you to step into a deeper surrender to all that God is in you. This year, who are you called to be? What are you called to manifest? What calls for you to be in action in the world and in your life? Rest and allow the Spirit of God to speak to you in this silence. like any ritual. The power is not in the paper, or the envelope, or the pencil. The power is in your intention, and we give ourselves these physical symbols simply to anchor fully in that consciousness. So you will seal into even an empty envelope the call of your heart for this year. Know that as you step into the experience of the 12 powers and the taking on the Christ energy, you call these experiences, you call yourself to a higher awareness, you call yourself to a greater service. Thank you, God, for the power of yes. Thank you, God, for the faith that leads us no matter what. And so it is.